It's Blackbeard Mirage. I'm back. What's happening? And in this tape, what I want to do is look into how indigenous people, when we are not careful, we, fall into that old sin known as idol worship. All right. Now, idol worship could be of a multitude of things. All right. We tend to think of idol worship as maybe a wooden item, or a particular stone item, or some type of item that's made out of a material, and people bowing down and worshiping it. Now, that is the mundane form of idol worship. But we could worship, let's say, certain positions in life. So, for example, if we like attention, if we are attention hungry, or the term, like people say, you may be an attention whore, then you worshiping attention. You know what I'm saying? And that's what you're getting off on. And you will do anything to get the attention. Or if it could be, let's say, pity party energy. You like to feel like you the victim all the time because, let's say, people always show up for you and make things easier for you. So, you're worshiping that. So it is anything outside of yourself that you are giving just your pure energy to and your focus. It is a form of idol worship, whether it's on an extreme level or on a basic level. And it's just something that we should always stay away from. And in the modern world, some of the idol worship we have today would be, of course, money. A lot of people are worshiping money for wrong reasons. Of course, we need to use it to take care of, our basic needs and necessities. But we have people who go into the greed thing with it. You know what I'm saying? You don't want to do that. So you got people worshiping that. And of course, you got people worshiping these different, symbols and figures in these religions, and in particular, the indigenous people of America. When we were hit with colonialism, we were face to face with the pale skin, pale flesh, blonde haired or brown haired, blue eyed, Jesus. You know what I'm saying? That was the invading picture that, a lot of our people fell to idol worship with. So this sin of idol worship really, goes all the way back to even in the Old Testament. All right. So we're going to read in the Old Testament on a form of idol worship, but this one is into, idol worship of a king. All right. A lot of our people have this, following the mentality. Okay. And what's very, very sad is that a lot of us went from crowns to clowns. Let me repeat. A lot of us went from crowns to clowns. All right. Indigenous people once lived as sovereigns. You know what I'm saying? Like even the word niggaz, or the word niggaz, or my nigga. When you really look up the word, it, ultimately means just sovereign king, all right? Or basically just a sovereign person of the land, all right? And a Tompton, okay? So it's almost like when you in your yard at home, you sovereign. You can go anywhere in your yard, do whatever you want. You can plant a tree anywhere in your yard, a little garden or something like that. So it's your shit, you know what I'm saying? You sovereign in it. You got the 100% rights. So as indigenous people, that's how we used to live. We didn't really have this concept of a king or this one particular person that's ruling everybody and we got to follow him. We may have had our certain, let's say, chiefs and people who were in certain leadership positions throughout the different industries and the different organizations of our communities in the ancient world. But nevertheless, this concept of us just looking at this one man or woman like their God, once again, going into the idol worship, looking at them like their God, and we're just, bowing down to them and giving all sovereign rights and transferring all sovereign power to them and giving up our sovereign indigenous, Aboriginal right. Because that's part of your birth inheritance. You know what I'm saying? Having that, that right to just walk on the land like that. So you give that up when you start bowing down to a president or bowing down to a king or bowing down to an emperor or a CEO or bowing down to anything other than yourself, your own inner soul, you know what I'm saying? Your own higher self, the collective where your own soul comes from. We may all call it the Most High or whatever, but basically we're talking about the collective, objective, pure spirit, pure soul, pure consciousness. So, outside of that, you shouldn't really be giving your attention and your concentration energy to anything like that. Because all people you're going to magnetize in your life that are positive and healthy for you, they're going to be people that's doing the same thing as you. They paying attention to their own inner soul energy. They trying to, get in tune with the Most High and really clear away the bullshit and really just trying to do this shit the right way. You know what I'm saying? So when you on your square and you down your own path and you doing that, you're going to pull the people in your life you need without having to look for them. So when you following certain codes and certain commandments, like things just happen and work out a certain way for you. That's just the natural process and the natural birthing way of things. And that's ultimately what the Torah is, also known as the Tanakh, okay? Which is just the Hebrew Bible, okay? Or the old, scripture, you know what I'm saying? The old Hebrew scripture. But that's ultimately what it is. It's a spiritual, and when I say spiritual, more so from just the non-physical parts, okay? The higher aspects of matter. But just giving you the understanding of how nature works on a natural level and supernatural level. Because everything is a birthing process, ultimately. You know what I'm saying? And that's what, spirituality and evolution is. It's a birthing process. You know what I'm saying? So that's how you should look at everything in the Old Testament or everything in the so-called Bible. Like, that's why you read stories and people are always, having children and things are being born, because ultimately it's trying to show you, like, that's what creation is ultimately. Even when Moses came across I am, a lot of the times when you read, deeper into Hebrew, you'll come across I am becoming, meaning that it's not necessarily being still. It's still in motion. It's still moving. It's still evolving into something. So the Most High is an ever-moving force. It's an ever-moving pure consciousness. It's not being still. It's not, a still thing. It's not a dead energy. It's constantly moving and constantly expanding itself and becoming something new. So that's what you read in the Old Testament. And every time a new generation of people come up, those are just the current modern day people who are in the process of evolving and moving the spiritual process of whatever the Most High really got going on, progressing this and moving this on. Okay. So when we read about the Israelites, ultimately what this is, it's just talking about the indigenous people of the planet. Okay. The Aboriginal or indigenous, first people on the planet, ultimately. That's all it's talking about. Okay. And, you have people that are being in an upright way. All right. And doing things following the natural order of life. You know what I'm saying? So that's ultimately what it is. And that's why you'll see people make that correlation between indigenous people and the Israelites. You know what I'm saying? When you read in the Old Testament, what you'll always find is that the Israelites always are trying to hold on to more of a natural, original culture. You know what I'm saying? Not adding too much of the foolery, keeping things basic, not making images and making, symbols and things and bowing down to these things. You know what I'm saying? And ultimately just dealing with pure spirit, and that's how the culture was. You know what I'm saying? They dealt with each other. They, only married within each other and stuff like that. And that's how it was. And when you read throughout the Old Testament, they always are either being captured or being seduced or being swayed or being bribed or being forced to adopt someone else's culture. And this is what is going on throughout the whole Old Testament. Now, of course, you got to remember now, the Bible and whoever wrote this stuff, they understood a multiplicities of studies. So this is, somewhat prophecy, of course. It's what's known as eschatology. Okay. And it's also dealing with certain biological principles as well, and certain spiritual alchemical principles as well. So we need to understand that, Israel ultimately, is of course indigenous people. And then you have all these foreign cultures trying to get them to, give up their ways and follow their system. All right. Follow their king, basically get into the whole idol worship thing. So what we had to do is just go through the whole history real quick of idol worship, because that's ultimately what our problem is. Just worshiping shit. You know what I'm saying? And just giving concentration energy to things that don't even matter. So what I want to do right now is read into Samuel 8. And real quick, we'll talk about how we wanted to start having a king and stuff like that. Because that was what was going on. When you have an indigenous culture, but you may be surrounded by other kingdoms, and it may be a large civilization where other people live. They living and doing things the way they do. Eating and, and worshiping and just, having lifestyles the way they do things. And sometimes, that can be a problem, if some of those, inner culture habits and behaviors conflict with how you all do things. So a lot of what you read in the Old Testament is pertaining to that. And in Samuel, you have, the prophet Samuel. As he's getting older, the people start, once again, crying and wanting a king. Because up until this point, there really is no king like that. And they basically wanted a king. But ultimately, this is leading to idol worship, because they seeing what these other cultures and how other people doing things, and wanted to give up their ways of their forefathers and their foremothers, which of course leads to them always getting fucked up. So who could that be other than so-called black people? You know what I'm saying? Who right now is on the planet that don't know who their culture is, that call themselves like 8 different, nationalities and ethnicities, that don't know who their forefather and foremother really is? Like, who else do we know right now really fits that description? You know what I'm saying? That's so-called black people. We can cut away the fuckery, and not waste no time. You know what I'm saying? That's so-called black people, all right? So what happened is we got to go into Samuel and see what went down. And of course, we'll analyze this as usual. So it says, and it came to pass when Samuel was old that he made his sons judges over Israel. Now the name of his firstborn was Joel, the name of his second Abijah. They were judges in Beersheba. And his sons walked not in his ways, but turned aside after lucre, and took bribes and perverted justice. So what we have right here is, we already see in Samuel 8 that Samuel the prophet, he's getting older, but his sons, he made them judges in Israel, because at this time they have judges, and they have the prophets and stuff like that. Once again, they don't have no king and all that. So the people, they're able to live and do their thing, all right? So Samuel is, he's getting older, so he's going to have to start passing the power on and appoint some new people, so the people can, have, proper counsel. So he's trying to put his sons in positions, but his sons are not really following ways like him. They taking bribes and they perverting justice. Like, for example, it's another part in Samuel where you have a prophet named Eli, okay? And what's going on with him is that his sons are doing some of the same things, taking bribes. When a lot of the offerings are made, they taking a fork and sticking it in the meat and taking pieces of the meat off and shit like that. And also they sleeping with the women too. You know what I'm saying? Like his sons were sleeping with the women who were at the door. So today that would be, your deacons and all your people at the church that's up under the pastor, that's sleeping with the women, that may be at the door passing out the pamphlets and stuff, or maybe at the door taking people coats, or maybe at the door, playing the role as like ushers and stuff like that in a church. So once again, you so-called black people have been doing the same bullshit since forever. You know what I'm saying? You bitch ass preachers out there, and you fuck ass pastors. The Old Testament is talking about you niggas. Because this shit you doing now is nothing new. You dark priests. You know what I'm saying? You inverted, Babylonian Pharisee. You know what I'm saying? Parasitic Sadducee. You motherfuckers. Y'all been doing this shit for a while. It was actually you all who, during the captivity in Babylon, believe it or not, were swayed and seduced, once again, to give up your ways and to follow the foreigner, okay? And taking on a lot of their cultures and practices, because it was very, very easy to do. It was hard to try to uphold, your original indigenous culture when you were dealing with that foreign shit. You know what I'm saying? Under foreign captivity with the Babylonian. And a lot of you all start taking on their practices and then try to bring them back to y'all people and saying, hey, y'all, this the original indigenous Hebrew shit. And we saying, no, that's not it. You know what I'm saying? So you dark priests out there, you know what I'm saying? They talk about you motherfuckers in Samuel. They talk about you motherfuckers in Daniel. They talk about you motherfuckers in Jeremiah. You know what I'm saying? You dark, sick ass priests. And you all actually are the ones who are responsible for passing over a lot of the assets and resources to these amalgamated pale Europeans, in particular the so-called fake Jew. because those fake Jews of today, and I'm not even talking about like Rothschild and Lehman, not them. I'm talking about the ones even behind them. Okay, because Rothschild and some of these people actually may be managers for other, Neanderthal hominid offspring families that we may not know about, that have more wealth in the whole pot of wealth that Rothschild and them are eating from. You know what I'm saying? But it was these, old, indigenous original Hebrews, during that whole Babylon shit, y'all start giving over, into that foreign shit, taking on that shit, and that kind of translated into what we see today. So a lot of that may have been scattering around, but y'all know how Blackbeard do. I just let that shit drop pretty naturally. But to conclude this little part and then go back into the reading of Samuel, what I just talked about is the history of the bullshit ass pastor and how they be sleeping with the women, taking money out the collection plate, talking about the pale Jesus, talking about all that black witchcraft, that goddamn, like I said, the inverted fucking spirituality that's going on in the church with that blue-eyed blonde-haired Jesus. Like that bullshit that they doing, that's the Babylonian magic. You see, that's the same Babylonian magic that they talking about in Jeremiah, once again in the Old Testament. So they talking about Babylon and Revelations and all that, and even some of the stuff in the New Testament dealing with the Romans and all that. It was these original indigenous Hebrews, these sellouts, once again, that were in captivity, that couldn't uphold the commandments. They started giving up the codes. The ones that started snitching during the Inquisition. You know what I'm saying? That's who was doing this shit. So a lot of y'all also get mad at the so-called Moors, a lot of the Muslims, but it was a lot of Hebrews. You know what I'm saying? That was from West Africa. A lot of them were from North Africa, Southern Europe, and Central Europe. But hell, a lot of them had resources too, because they are our ancestors as well. So you got to remember now, when a lot of the indigenous people of Europa and West Africa were being kicked out by their amalgamated children, a lot of those people started coming here to the West, and we called them Moors, Moranos, Conversos. They was calling them all them different names, all right? But a lot of this stock were what we call Hebrews. You know what I'm saying? And that's the culture that they had, all right? That's why a lot of the so-called slave rebellions in the South and all up the East Coast, why were the so-called slaves worshiping the Most High? They weren't worshiping no blue-eyed, brown-haired Jesus. Like, ask yourself that. Why were the so-called slaves or the prisoners of war, why were they worshiping the Most High? They weren't dealing with the Jesus shit. Why were they dealing with the Old Testament? Why did when they captured the boy Nat Turner? Why was he dealing with the Old Testament and the whole Egypt story and all that? I thought they was worshiping Jesus. Okay, so these people was already dealing with a lot of that stuff. All right, but once again, to conclude that shit, because I had to drop that shit, because David Carroll be saying that shit and he's right. Like, you can't get on the so-called black woman or black man and not get on the black pastor, because he is the one who really is sealing all this shit together. He's the one that's getting funded by Rothschild, the Rockefellers, and once again all these damn Jewish banksters, these Pharisee banksters, these Roman banksters, these Jesuit Catholic banksters. You know what I'm saying? These Spanish conquistadors. He's the one that's getting funded by them. And then coming back to us with the bullshit. No different than he was doing during the so-called times of slavery. That's why they always bankroll the pastor. So once again, this manhood shit is very, very deep. Okay? But going back to this, so once again, we see in Samuel, that Samuel, he's getting old and his sons on the bullshit. His sons ain't trying to keep this shit going. They ain't trying to keep this shit real. They just want to take money from the people. Okay? It says, then all the elders of Israel gathered themselves together and came to Samuel unto Ramah. And they said unto him, Behold, thou art old, and thy sons walk not in thy ways. Now make us a king to judge us like all the nations. But the thing displeased Samuel when they said, give us a king to judge us. And Samuel prayed unto the Lord. Now, this is very, very key now, because once again, we talked about indigenous people. We talked about our problem with idol worship. We talked about our problem with following foreign nations and looking into the fucking Joneses yard and wondering, goddamn, why they got this kind of car. Looking into the fucking the goddamn Williamson's backyard, and seeing, damn, they got a swimming pool. You know what I'm saying? Looking at the fucking Carters, goddamn, the school they kids going to, and saying, damn, they can pay for that. Like, all this shit we doing, instead of worrying about what we need to worry about, worrying about our own shit. Once again, we've always been doing this. So it said that all the elders of Israel, or all the elders of the indigenous people, they went to Samuel and said, make us a king to judge us like all the nations. So they saying, like, we want a king like everybody else got. Not something that's just good for the indigenous Americans. Nah, we want to do what everybody else doing. We want to follow their shit. We want to sleep with they damn women. We want to sleep with they men. We want to do all this type shit. You know what I'm saying? Then it says that, but the thing displeased Samuel when they said, give us a king to judge us. So Samuel was very displeased when he heard that, because he's thinking in his mind, y'all living free. You know what I'm saying? Y'all living as pure nature, pure indigenous, aboriginal, Algonquin people. The only thing y'all in tune with is actually nature and the cosmos itself, and the origin of all soul and spirit itself. Why would y'all want a king? Y'all king is actually the one who manifested the universe. The mother and father in heaven, the source of all this shit. Why would y'all want to bow down to a man? Why the fuck would you niggas want to do some shit like that? So that's what Samuel is saying to himself. Why the fuck would you niggas want to do that? He looking at these old ass niggas as they come to him. Like, just picture this shit. You know what I'm saying? You niggas can read the Bible and goddamn cuss or smoke your black and mild or whatever it is you do. We still some niggas. But, so Samuel's sitting there and like, these niggas done walked in and they saying, we want a king to judge us like all the other nations. And Samuel looking like, y'all niggas dumb as fuck. Just like Blackbeard be looking at niggas like, y'all niggas dumb in here. Once again, y'all want to follow these damn white folk. Samuel like, well, y'all niggas stupid. So then Samuel, he prayed to the Most High. So let's see what happened after that. So then it says, and the Lord said unto Samuel, hearken unto the voice of the people in all that they say unto thee, for they have not rejected thee, but they have rejected me, that I should not be king over them, according to all the works which they have done since the day that I brought them up out of Egypt, even unto this day, and that they have forsaken me and served other gods, so they do also unto thee. Now therefore hearken unto their voice, howbeit thou shalt earnestly forewarn them, and shalt declare unto them the manner of the king that shall reign over them. So real quick, let's go through, what's going on with the Most High. So within the heart of Samuel, he's receiving this through the Most High within his own heart. And Most High is basically saying, like, go ahead and do what these people say, because they're not rejecting you, they're rejecting me, and they don't want me to be the king over them. So the Most High, or basically whatever really made the earth, whatever made those spiritual celestial stars in the heavens, you know what I'm saying? Whatever really made our soul, whatever really is responsible for what material matter is, etheric matter, and even the divine spiritual things that we can't really understand, whatever is the true source of all that, the prime source, that androgynous energy, whatever that thing really is, we didn't want to be in tune with that, which is very, very foolish to me, because it looks like when we were in tune with it, we were able to do powerful things, building pyramids, you know what I'm saying, had high technology in Atlantis, you know, we was able to do some pretty good things when we were in tune with it. But when the ego kicked in and the whole, you know, Yaqub experiments and a lot of the Jezebel experiments, you know, Jezebel and her experiments. But this is what led to the downfall, you know. So moving on, then it says that according to all the works which they have done since the day that I brought them up out of Egypt, even unto this day. So what this is saying is that, you know, this shit has happened to us before. Now, don't think that, you know, it was some shit that happened in a physical place called Egypt. But ultimately what it's saying is that there were times before where our real source, because you got to remember now, whatever birthed indigenous people, I mean, that's where we come from now. It's not like Aboriginal people or the first people on the planet just came out of the ground. Like, we didn't just come out of nowhere. Didn't nobody fucking make our body out of mud and fucking grass and goddamn pine straws like the fucking, that shit didn't happen like that. You know what I'm saying? Like a real being birthed us, you know, and whatever that being is, the soul and spirit of that real being is clearly what nature is. You know what I'm saying? So there's nothing artificial about us. We're not hybrids. We're natural living beings. So, you know, it's like shit. It's something bigger than us, you know, and clearly, you know, once again, when you cut off from it, you get fucked up. But so then it says that, and served other gods, and so do they even unto thee. So once again, serving other gods, the whole idol worship thing. So this is where that comes from. Okay, this is where that comes from. So then it says, and Samuel told all the words of the Lord unto the people, that asked of him a king. And he said, so this is what Samuel said, responding to the people of Israel when they asked him for a king. You know, this is what the Most High told Samuel to tell the people. Because the Most High said, well, if you niggas want a king on earth, if y'all want to bow down to that white man, or if y'all want to bow down to some so-called black man, this is what he's going to do to you. So what I'm about to go into is this is what happened when you start idol worshiping. This is what happened when you want to follow somebody else. This is what happened when you stop being real niggas and real niggaz and stop being sovereigns and stop being autochtons. This is what happens. So listen up. And if you want to know where I'm getting this from, this is coming out of Samuel 10 in the Old Testament of the so-called Bible. All right. Out of Samuel 1. All right. Samuel 1, you know, but verse 10. So it says, and Samuel told all the words of the Lord unto the people that asked of him a king. And he said, this will be the manner of the king that shall reign over you. He will take your sons and appoint unto him for his chariots, and to be his horsemen, and they shall run before his chariots. And he will appoint them unto him, for captains of thousands and captains of fifties, and to plow his ground, and to reap his harvest, and to make his instruments of war, and the instruments of his chariots. So first right here, Samuel's telling the people of Israel that this king that y'all want in the future, he's going to reign over you. He's going to take your sons and appoint them to chariots and horsemen. And he's saying that they're going to have captains of thousands. They're going to make instruments of war and instruments of his chariots. So basically what that's saying is that he's going to take you all sons and make them, you know, fight for him. Make them, you know, train and be in his military so they can go on conquest for him. Once again, not for the Most High or not for the collective of the people. Because when we say the Most High, what we really are saying is all the souls and spirits of the indigenous Aboriginal people. That's really all we're saying. So we're not going to do it for that. We're going to do it for the ego of this one man. Then it says, this is what he's going to do to the daughters. And he will take your daughters to be perfumers and to be cooks and bakers. So he's saying that with all your daughters, he gonna take them and make them cook, make them be bakers and, create perfumes and do stuff like that. So, basically he making them work too. So once again, you so-called black men and women, don't corporate America take you all's daughters, turn them into good secretaries, turn them into good accountants, lawyers, turn them into good attorneys, you know what I'm saying? Good project managers, but don't they do all that stuff for the pale people? Don't they do that stuff for Babylon? Don't they do all that stuff for these foreign corporations? Do they do it for the indigenous Israel? No, they do not. Okay? All these so-called black women that know how to cook their ass off. When it says that he gonna take your daughters and make them cooks and bakers at Walmart, because at Walmart, they make their own, the fucking coleslaw and the potato salad and the rotisserie chicken and all that shit, right? Who y'all think back there making that shit? You better believe it, all right? So moving on, then it says, and he will take the 10th of your seed and of your vineyards and give to his officers and to his servants. And he will take your men servants and your maid servants and your goodliest young men, your asses, and put them to work. He will take the 10th of your flocks, and ye shall be his servants. And ye shall cry out in that day because of your king, whom you have chosen. And the Lord will not answer you in that day. But the people refuse to hearken unto the voice of Samuel, and they say, no, but there shall be a king over us, that we shall also be like all the nations, and that our king may judge us and go out before us and fight our battles. And Samuel heard all the words of the people, and he spoke them in the ears of the Lord. And the Lord said to Samuel, hearken unto their voice, and make them a king. And Samuel said unto the men of Israel, go ye every man unto his city. So what we have right here, we have the king in the future who's going to take all their land. So don't the government and the president of the United States Corporation, then they take all the indigenous people's land and then try to tell us we can't farm no more on our own land, and paid us fucking $70 so we don't farm no more on our own land. Then they take all the best people out the so-called black community who graduate in school, all the athletes, all the people that's on Silicon Valley and all the technology companies and Google and all that, all the nerd black people that the so-called black women they want to fuck with, the nerd black man, you know what I'm saying? All the nerd black women that you brothers was trying to shit on, now they at Silicon Valley building up these white folks shit, building up Babylon. You know what I'm saying? This is what happened. So after Samuel told them all this, the people just said, no, we still want a king to judge us. So then the Most High said, basically, get these niggas what they want. So this is what happened to us, man. And the idol worship is a terrible thing, but that's what happened. So right now, Donald Trump is y'all's king. He's playing the role. He's the king of the United States corporation. You know what I'm saying? As far as the figurehead, his financiers and his investors, the dark Talmudic priest, the dark Talmudic Babylonian priest behind him, the Talmudic Zionist, financier priest behind him, they the ones that's really running the show. The fucking parasitic magicians behind him, fake Jewish parasitic magicians, they the ones really running the show. But, he's playing the role as the king. So I just wanted to, make this to add to the series, so indigenous people can understand that when you idol worship and you don't follow your own code of commandments, this is what happened. And don't think that Babylon is necessarily a place. Of course, that area in the so-called Middle East, went around like Iraq and stuff like that. A lot of that does have ruins of Babylon and stuff like that. We know that. You even have certain Babylonian aspects here in America as well. But Don't forget that Babylon actually is a state of being, okay? It's more a state of being. It's a spiritual state of being, psychological and emotional state of being. You know, when you're lost, you have a void inside of you. You're idol worshiping. You're prostituting yourself. You know, you're opening your legs for anything. You know, you're giving up your power to foreign gods. You're giving your talent to foreign corporations. That's being in the state of Babylon. And then you have a state of Israel. That's the indigenous state. You know what I'm saying? Doing things following your forefather and foremother. Continuing your own legacy. You know what I'm saying? Passing on your inheritance. That's the Israel with. Okay? So it's the boy Blackbeard. Y'all stay tuned. You know, let me know what y'all think in the comment section. I'm out.